Hey guys, in today's video, I bring you a chilling story with revelations that will transform your vision of the future. Let's meet Leanna Wilder, a woman who literally died on the operating table and came back with an urgent message about what's to come. She uncovered shocking prophecies for November and the truth about love and eternal life that will leave you speechless. So, before we start, leave your like, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any content like this, and activate the bell to receive all notifications. Now, get ready to embark on this journey of transformation and discovery. My name is Leanna Wilder, and sometimes I wonder if my life was destined for this path. At 26, I lived in Fairhaven, Vermont, a sleepy town enveloped in an almost meditative silence that seemed to reflect my own life. My husband, Jonathan, and our 3-year-old Alex were the center of my world. I worked as an administrative assistant for the railroad company, which wasn't exciting at all, but it was safe, predictable, just how I liked it. I never thought I could live in a place like this, Jonathan told me one morning as I packed my bag for another day. Fairhaven is very calm, but it has a certain charm, don't you think? I smiled at him and nodded. You know that, for me, living here is like a safe haven. After everything I've been through, I think I'm right where I'm supposed to be. But things began to change in ways I could never have predicted. Shortly after that day, I began to feel intense pain in my abdomen, something that seemed, at first, to be a temporary discomfort. It was easy to ignore, so I ignored it, until the discomfort became impossible to control. You need to see a doctor, Leanna, Jonathan insisted, his face carrying an expression of concern that I didn't often see. If it continues like this, something might be wrong. It will pass, I replied, trying to maintain control. But the truth is that fear was already beginning to invade me, as if some part of me knew something much bigger was happening. The weeks dragged on, and the symptoms worsened to the point where I needed to take time off work. I stayed at home, going from appointment to appointment, but the doctors couldn't find an explanation. It was as if my own body was betraying me, and each exam that revealed nothing only increased my anguish. After weeks of rest and empty responses, I was determined to get back to my routine, imagining that maybe the movement would do me good. On my first day back to work, I noticed that the pain was different, as if something was out of place. I fought the feeling, trying to concentrate, but when I got to the end of the day, all I wanted was to go home. When the clock struck 4 p.m., I entered the elevator, my body overcome by an exhaustion that I couldn't explain. The pain suddenly intensified, and then everything went black. I felt myself falling, as if the ground was opening beneath my feet. At the last second, I saw the reflection of a woman beside me, her eyes wide and frightened. And then the world went dark. When I woke up, everything was blurry. The fluorescent light from the hospital ceiling seemed uncomfortable, and I couldn't make out the figures moving around me. My mind was still struggling to understand where I was, and the voices seemed distant, as if I were hearing everything underwater. I tried to focus, open my eyes more, but it was as if a fog was enveloping me, pulling me away from reality. "She's waking up," I heard a voice say. It was a soft, gentle voice. I tried to follow the sound, but the effort was too much. I felt a weight take over my body and, little by little, I let myself sink back into unconsciousness. When I woke up again, I noticed a woman next to me, holding my hand. She had warm eyes and a calm expression that contrasted with the confusion and anguish I felt. "Hello, Leanna," she said, and I noticed her accent was slightly different. "My name is Lakshmi. Rest assured, you are in good hands." I tried to respond, but my throat felt dry. A doctor approached and explained that I had collapsed and been rushed to the hospital, where I needed emergency surgery. The shock of the news almost took my breath away. I was 4 months pregnant, and the baby had not survived. A heavy silence took over the room as the truth of those words sunk in. Was I pregnant? I didn't know how to react. Surprise, sadness, and confusion mixed together in a whirlwind that made me want to fall apart right then and there. I didn't know, I whispered, more to myself than to them. I felt an emptiness inside me, a feeling of loss that seemed to sink into the depths of my being. Lakshmi remained beside me, her gaze full of understanding. "You're not alone," she murmured, squeezing my hand. It was at that moment that something inside me calmed down. Even in the midst of the pain, I felt a comforting presence that I couldn't explain. As preparations for surgery were being made, I heard Lakshmi whisper a prayer in a language I didn't understand. but each word seemed to have a sacred weight, as if it echoed within me. Before I could fully process what was happening, the anesthesia began to take effect, and the world around me began to go dark once again. The last thing I saw was Lakshmi's face, with a light, almost angelic smile. A feeling of tranquility enveloped me, and I surrendered to the darkness, unaware that I was about to experience something that would transform my life forever. I don't know exactly when it happened, but suddenly I realized I was floating. At first I thought I was dreaming. It was a surreal feeling, as if I were suspended, observing everything from a point above. As I looked down, I froze. My body was lying on the operating table, and around it, doctors and nurses were moving quickly, preparing equipment and discussing in low voices. I knew that was me, but at the same time, it didn't seem like it. I felt no pain, just a comforting lightness, a peace I had never experienced before. The scene seemed to unfold in slow motion, and oddly enough, I felt a quiet curiosity about what was happening. I watched as Dr. Evelyn Carter, the chief surgeon, gave quick instructions to the team, and something in her face made me realize the seriousness of the situation. She looked at the heart monitor, which showed a straight line, a sign that my heart had stopped. However, none of this caused me to panic. It was as if I was in a state of absolute acceptance. Instinctively, I tried to get the doctor's attention. "Hey, I'm up here. Can you see me?" My voice echoed in the void, but no one reacted. It was as if there was an invisible barrier between me and them, an impenetrable wall that isolated me from that world. I was overcome by a strange mixture of disbelief and fascination. As I watched, I saw Dr. Carter prepare to use the defibrillator. A spark of worry flashed through my mind. What if this shock hurts my body even more? But the feeling of peace was stronger than any rational thought. I just watched, feeling like a spectator in my own life. It was then that an indescribable force began to gently pull me out of that room. I looked up at the ceiling, and it seemed to dissolve into a radiant light, forming the beginning of a tunnel. The light at the end of this tunnel shone brightly, and without thinking, I was drawn to it. It was an overwhelming feeling, like something inside me knew I needed to move on. As I was enveloped by the light, I realized that my connection to my body was disappearing. The hospital, the doctors, the sound of the monitors, everything began to fade away around me, like a distant memory. As I approached the end of the tunnel, I felt a welcoming warmth envelop me. It was a pure, indescribable love, and at that moment, I knew I was home. Nothing could have prepared me for what came next, but I was ready to commit to this journey. Floating in the tunnel, I felt dizzying speed, but at the same time, there was no fear. On the contrary, it was as if I was enveloped in an indescribable comfort, a serenity that dispelled any trace of apprehension. The surrounding darkness was welcoming, as if the void itself had invisible arms that cradled me as I moved forward. In the distance, I saw a light that seemed to pulse, calling to me in an almost hypnotic way. I didn't know where I was going, but the feeling was one of total surrender and confidence. Approaching the light, a wave of gentle warmth washed over me. It was as if I was welcomed by a loving presence, something that enveloped me completely, without judgment, without rush. As I crossed the end of the tunnel and entered the light, I was filled with a happiness and love that I cannot describe in human words. It was as if I myself became part of the light, as if I were love itself in its purest and most essential form. The feeling of being home was so powerful that I almost cried with joy, even in that disembodied state. In the midst of this intense glow, I felt the presence of someone next to me. It was my Aunt Amelia, who had passed away a few years earlier. She looked at me with a warm smile and wrapped me in a warm hug. "Liana, it's so good to see you," she said, her voice ringing in my mind. I felt a deep peace at her side, as if all the love she had given me in life was now multiplied infinitely. I wanted to talk, to ask questions, but it felt like words weren't necessary. There was a deep understanding between us. "You have not yet finished your journey," she murmured, eyes that shone with infinite wisdom. "But first, there are things you need to see." Suddenly, the environment around us began to change, and a giant screen of sorts appeared before me. In it, images of my life began to emerge, like a film that showed both happy moments and those that I preferred to forget. It was as if my life was being unfolded before me, every detail placed in 3 columns: what I had planned before I was born, what I actually experienced, and the goals I had not yet achieved. The amazing thing is that there was no judgment. I didn't feel shame, fear, or guilt, just a feeling of understanding, as if it were all necessary learning. Every choice and moment has its purpose, my aunt said softly. Even what you don't understand now will make sense one day. I stared at the screen, taking in every detail, and understood that there was a depth to my existence that I had never realized. Something inside me awakened to a new understanding, and at that moment, I felt like I was ready to know more about this journey I called life. In front of that gigantic screen, I watched my life unfold in a sequence of moments. It was like watching a movie with the events of each phase, but with a depth that I had never felt before. The screen was divided into 3 columns, and each one told a different part of my story. In the first column, I saw the plan that I had made before I was born. Every choice, every encounter, every challenge I decided to face was there. It was strange, but comforting, knowing that everything had a reason, that my every step had been intentional. In the second column, I saw what I really experienced up until that moment, not just the most memorable moments, like Alex's birth and my marriage to Jonathan, but also small, everyday gestures. There was a scene that caught my attention. I was leaving the train station after work and I helped an elderly woman carry a heavy bag, seemingly insignificant, but as I watched the scene, I understood that this act of kindness had generated waves of love that I would never have imagined. What surprised me most was that I didn't feel judged. I also saw moments that I would rather forget, like the arguments with Jonathan and the times when impatience got the best of me with Alex. But there was no criticism, just a loving understanding that these were also learning moments. Everything was part of a larger web of experiences and emotions that shaped me and made me evolve. In the third column, I saw the objectives and purposes that I had not yet fulfilled. It was a fascinating sight, as I saw dreams I had forgotten and gifts I had neglected. There was a calling to help people, something I always felt but never sought to explore. I saw the faces of people I didn't know yet, but who were destined to cross my path. I saw a future of service to others, something that filled my heart with new determination. My Aunt Amelia, next to me, smiled. We all have opportunities, Leanna. Some we take advantage of, others we let pass. But love always offers us new paths. Those words stuck with me, like a reminder that my life was shaped by choices and that there was still time to do more, to be more. As my life review unfolded, I felt a deep sense of acceptance. It was as if each choice, right or wrong, had been a necessary piece of a larger puzzle. I wasn't there to blame myself, but to learn and evolve. I understood that life is a continuous cycle of learning, and each experience is a step towards something greater. In the end, I realized that this was the true meaning of being there, to learn and prepare myself for what was yet to come. When the screen disappeared, my Aunt Amelia placed her hand on my shoulder and, with a warm smile, said to me, "Now, I want to show you something even deeper." Without the need for words, I understood that she was taking me to a special place. In the blink of an eye, I was transported to some kind of immense library, but unlike any I could imagine, it was an ethereal space, with no visible walls, just endless shelves filled with vibrant lights that pulsed as if they were alive. Amelia called this place the Akashic Records, explaining that all the lives and experiences we have ever lived were stored there, each of them represented by a pulsating light. It was the record of all souls and their journeys. The idea of having access to all my past lives was both exciting and terrifying. Here, you can understand how much your journey extends beyond what you have experienced in this lifetime, she said, guiding me to one of the shelves. Upon touching one of these lights, I was immediately transported to one of my past lives. I felt like I was living that moment again. I was a young girl in some distant time, where the streets were lit only by lamps and the houses were built of wood and stone. I was on board a ship, with the salty smell of the sea all around me. The joy of traveling was replaced by sudden fear when a storm formed on the horizon. The ship ended up sinking, and I felt the cold water envelop me until everything went out. I returned to the present with the sensation of drowning still in my body, like a vivid memory. In another record, he was a warrior in an age of conflict. He held a sword and fought with bravery, but also with fear. I found myself in the middle of battle, with the sound of screams and the weight of steel in my hands. I understood that experience had shaped my courage in future lives, a trait that I still carried in my soul. These images appeared before me like scenes from a movie, but each one brought me a new understanding. There was a connection between all these lives, as if they were chapters in a continuous story. Each experience brought lessons and left marks, which, in some way, were present in the person I was today. Finally, I touched one last light and saw a scene that filled me with a mixture of emotions. I was a slave, but in another life, I was also the foreman who mistreated me. Seeing the duality of my own soul, alternating between the oppressed and the oppressor, gave me a deep understanding of empathy and the power of choices. Everything, each life, each action, seemed to form a greater whole, uniting experiences in a learning journey. These visions reinforced the certainty that we are all connected. My life, my mistakes, my triumphs, everything was there to teach me and transform me. And once I understood this, I felt like I was ready to take the next step in my journey. After deep exploration of the Akashic records, I felt my soul was immersed in a new understanding of who I was and who I had been. However, there was something more, something that had yet to be revealed. As the vision of the Akashic library faded, I felt the presence of someone new beside me. The energy was intense, a vibration that radiated wisdom and power. The figure revealed himself as Elder Kale, a being of light with a presence that was both comforting and imposing. He had an almost human appearance, but his countenance seemed to contain eons of knowledge and understanding. When he looked at me, I felt like he saw every part of me, every fear, every mistake, every moment of love and pain. There was no hiding anything from Kale, but I also knew he was there to guide me, not judge. "Liana," he said in a deep voice that seemed to echo within me, "there are truths that need to be revealed to you, and the time is near. Humanity is about to experience profound changes, and you need to be ready to understand and share these revelations." My questions seemed to float through my mind, but before I could speak, he continued, "What is about to happen was predicted a long time ago. There are spiritual forces that have been hidden, waiting for the right moment to emerge. In November, these forces will begin to manifest, and the world as you know it will be transformed. It is the beginning of a new era, and every soul will have an important role to play." The intensity of his words gave me a feeling of urgency, as if the weight of history and the future rested on that moment. "But what can I do?" I asked, my voice breaking. "I'm just an ordinary person, lost in all this." Kyle smiled slightly, a smile that conveyed understanding. "You are not just one. Each soul is a vital piece of a whole. Your role, Liana, is to share the truth you have discovered, help people reconnect with their own essence and prepare them for these changes. Love will be the key to going through this period of transformation. Only those who understand the unity of all souls and the power of love will be able to endure and grow." A wave of emotions washed over me, and a part of me feared what was to come. However, as I looked at Kyle, I felt that I was not alone in this quest. He placed a hand on my shoulder, and a feeling of peace and strength spread through me. "Remember, Liana, life is eternal, and love is the essence of everything. Trust your journey and follow with courage." With those words, his figure began to disappear, but the message and mission remained engraved in my soul. I knew that when I returned, my life would never be the same. As Elder Kale's figure disappeared, a sense of peace came over me, but it was soon replaced by a new awareness. My journey in that dimension was coming to an end. I felt, somehow, that my time there was over. A thought formed in my mind, clear and direct, as if it were a silent order. "You need to go back." The idea of returning to the physical body, leaving behind all that peace and love, made my heart sink. I didn't want to go back. I tried to hold on to that feeling of unity and happiness, but the force pulling me back into my body was relentless. "But I belong here," I thought, almost in despair. This was where I felt like I was finally complete, where everything made sense. The warmth, the peace, the indescribable love. How could I leave it all behind and return to a world of uncertainty and limitations? It was then that Kale's voice sounded one last time in my mind, clear and serene. "There is more to life than meets the eye. Life is eternal, Liana. Your journey continues, and there is much to do. You are not being punished when you return, is being graced with a new mission." Those words echoed inside me, and I felt a wave of acceptance wash over me. Returning to the body was not a prison, but an opportunity. I understood that what I experienced there would not be lost. On the contrary, It would be part of me forever. My purpose was to bring this truth to the world, share the love and wisdom I experienced, and prepare people for the changes that were coming. With one last look at the light surrounding me, I closed my spiritual eyes and felt as if I was being pulled at high speed, falling back into what felt like a heavy, dense body. The sensation was of a dizzying fall, and the peace I felt began to turn into increasing pain. When I returned to my physical body, the pain was so intense that it felt unbearable, as if I were being compressed into something small and suffocating. I was back in the recovery room, feeling the weight of the anesthesia and the tubes connected to me. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. The shock of returning to my body was overwhelming, and tears ran silently down my face. When I opened my eyes, I saw a nurse beside me, her face gentle and concerned. I was back, but something inside me had changed forever. Love, peace, revelations about eternity and the purpose of life were now part of me. Deep down, I knew my mission was just beginning. Every person that crossed my path would be a chance to share a piece of what I experienced. The message Cale had left, life is eternal, and love is the essence of everything, echoed in my mind. Returning to my body had been painful, but the mission that awaited me filled every part of my being with renewed purpose. Once I recovered enough to leave the hospital, I felt like everything around me had changed. The town of Fairhaven, so familiar, now seemed to pulse with a vitality I had never noticed before. It was as if I saw through a new lens, seeing things beyond ordinary appearances. The trees that lined the streets were not just trees, but living entities, radiating energy of their own. The sky, the birds, even the people passing by me all seemed part of an invisible harmony that I could feel. As I walked away from the hospital, I noticed this new realization intensify. Every face I encountered carried a story that seemed to reveal itself to me, as if I could sense people's emotions without them saying a word. It was as if a door inside me had been opened, allowing me to feel the pain and joy of others with a clarity that touched me deeply. This newfound empathy was both overwhelming and beautiful. In a few moments, I understood that this was one of the gifts that had been given to me during my experience. My heightened sensitivity also led me to notice a kind of synesthesia that I had never experienced before. When listening to music, each note seemed to manifest itself as a color in my mind, vibrating in tones that carried emotions and meanings. Classical music, in particular, seemed to envelop my soul in a welcoming warmth, filling me with a sense of healing and wholeness. It was as if I could see the sound and feel the music coursing through every cell in my body. This new realization also gave me something I can only describe as a heightened intuition. When I saw a person, I could feel an energy around them, as if I saw shadows of past hurts or glimmers of future hopes. One morning, as I watched Jonathan and Alex playing in the yard, I noticed a faint shadow of sadness in Jonathan, something he was trying to hide but that my new sensitivity could pick up on. It wasn't just an intuition, but a clarity that told me this experience had transformed me from the inside out. Furthermore, there was a deep connection with nature that had previously gone unnoticed by me. I began to look at the trees, the grass, and even the rocks with renewed respect. Every element of nature seemed to carry a part of that universal truth that Elder Cale had mentioned. It was as if everything around me reminded me of the message that love is the essence of everything, and that unity permeates every aspect of existence. I knew these gifts were not just for my personal understanding, but to help others. I felt a responsibility to share what I had learned, to spread the message that life is eternal, and that love is the ultimate purpose. Even though the world around me seemed the same, I was no longer the same person. There was a greater purpose that guided me, and every day I was reminded of that, especially when I felt the energy and life pulsing in every being I encountered. Throughout the days and weeks after I left the hospital, the intensity of the spiritual experience I experienced continued to reverberate in every thought, every feeling. That final message that Elder Cale had left, love is the essence of everything, became a kind of mantra, echoing in me every time I breathed. It was as if a new flame of purpose had been ignited, illuminating every corner of my being with the understanding that I was here for something greater, to share the truths that had been revealed to me, and to help others awaken to the spiritual reality of life. I began to feel a growing desire to talk about love as the fundamental force that permeates the universe. It was not just romantic or familial love, but an unconditional love that transcends common human understanding. It was a love that doesn't judge, that just welcomes. unites and heals. I realized that the essence of everything, people, plants, animals, and even the most difficult situations, was made up of this love. This love was the very fabric of reality, and understanding it was like holding the key to lasting peace and happiness. My purpose also extended beyond my own perceptions and feelings. I felt I needed to help other people discover their spiritual connection, free themselves from the shackles of fear and judgment, and see life as a continuous journey of learning and evolution. I started sharing my story with family and close friends, and little by little, I realized that each time I told my story, something in people's eyes changed. It was as if a glow of hope and understanding appeared, a flame that illuminated their souls, showing them that life was much more than they imagined. These conversations showed me that many of us live disconnected from our true essence and purpose. Daily worries, fear, and limiting beliefs create a barrier that keeps us from understanding that we are eternal beings, living temporary experiences to evolve spiritually. With this in mind, I made the decision to start working voluntarily in institutions where I could share these ideas, such as shelters and emotional support centers. I even started visiting prisoners, bringing them messages of hope and the notion that everyone, regardless of their mistakes, carries within them the divine spark and the possibility of transformation. Reflecting on religions, I felt a certain sadness when realizing how spirituality is often reduced to dogmas and judgments. My experience has shown me that the essence of all spiritual teachings is love, compassion, and unity. Christ, Buddha, and other spiritual masters came to teach us just that the path to peace lies in understanding our unity and practicing love. Thus, I began to see life as a spiritual school. Every person, every situation, every joy, and every pain were opportunities to learn and evolve. Even the most painful challenges I faced were ultimately lessons that shaped and strengthened me. This understanding transformed my view of suffering and difficulties. Now, I saw them as part of a larger plan, one that was preparing me to fulfill my mission of spreading love and awakening the spirit of those around me. As I walk through life now, I feel a peace and purpose I didn't know before. And more than that, I feel like I'm finally connected to the true essence of what it means to live, to love, understand, and help. The mission given to me is great, and I may never see all the fruits of my efforts. But I know that in every soul I can touch, I will be fulfilling the purpose that was revealed to me in that transformative experience. If you like this beautiful spiritual testimony, leave a like, comment on your impressions, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to activate the notification bell to watch each new video and help us spread this message to a greater number of people. Until next time.